After my husband's ex tricked him into thinking I was carrying a child for another man, he left me. I ended our relationship, but he's returned 8 years later, eager to meet his son. There may not be a more entitled man than my ex-husband. I thought I could finally rest easy after making the finest decision of my life by breaking off all contact with him, but now he's back. I will give you some background. Nathan and I were a happy married couple 8 years ago. I foolishly believed that our connection was stable. Our friendship was strong, coupled up for 2 years. After being engaged for about a year and making wedding preparations, we finally tied the knot. My belief that we were soulmates led me to the point where I would have defended our marriage to the death. However, I suppose I was the only one. My husband was laid off a few months after we tied the knot. I had faith that we could get through this and that he would find a new chance, even though it was a tough moment for us both. Thanks to my full-time job and our money, we were able to get by. After what felt like an endless stream of interviews, he was eventually accepted after a few months of trying his hardest to acquire a job. Our joy on the day he got the email is something I'll never forget. To really make a fuss, I treated him to supper as a celebratory gesture. My marriage was about to crumble due to this job, and I had no idea it would happen. On returning from his first day on the job, he appears anything but cheerful. Upon first glance, I could tell something was up with him. After then, a highly contentious discussion ensued. Jessica, my husband's ex-girlfriend, works at the same place he just joined, which is almost comically bad. I was aware of Jessica. After dating for 3 years, Nathan proposed, but she rejected and eventually broke up with him. It had been some time before we actually met and began dating. We didn't dwell on our ex-lover much, but I could tell it was hard for him, and he never brought her up again after our one conversation. It was Jessica, of all people, and my stomach dropped when I heard that. Among all individuals, she was the one. The next step was unclear to me. I get it, he hadn't felt anything for her in years, but I still wasn't thrilled about the prospect of them collaborating. We spent a considerable amount of time discussing our options, and he appeared to be genuinely distressed as well. We were about to deplete our funds, and I was worried about how we would pay all our bills, unless he offered to leave his work, which would have been a drastic move for both of us. On top of that, I tried to convince myself that I was being immature by leaving my work because of my ex. We spoke late into the night about next steps, and I felt somewhat better about it all by the time we finished. Weirdly, we still felt as if our relationship was being impacted by an ex-boyfriend from long ago. My husband was extremely loving and kind and put all my doubts at ease. The next day, he went to work, and when he came back, he said that she was in a completely different department and he hardly even saw her once during the day. He told me that he never intended to speak to her, unless it was for some unlikely work reason, and that he would tell me immediately if that happened. That put my mind at ease, and as more days passed, I stopped thinking about her completely. My husband was as loving as ever, and I was proud of the two of us for overcoming something that could have caused serious trouble if not handled well. Looking back, I laugh at how naive I was. I was so blinded by love and trust in my husband that I didn't once think that something fishy was going on. A couple of months into his new job, he went on a business trip. He told me that if it goes well, he may get a promotion, so I was very excited for him. I asked him if I could tag along with him and make it a mini getaway for the two of us, but he said that he would be working the whole time, so there wasn't a point. He also said that the team going for the meeting was all men and none of them were bringing their wives or girlfriends, so I wouldn't be very comfortable. I was a little upset, but didn't think anything much of it. What he said did make sense. When he came back, he was very happy. I asked him about his meetings and if he thought he would get the promotion, but he might have to go on a few more meetings with this particular contractor before the promotion could be possible. Over the next 3 months, he went on trips at least once a month, but there was no news of a promotion. Instead of getting suspicious, I was naive enough to actually be concerned about his company making him work so hard without increasing his pay. I also want to make it clear that after the initial discussion, neither of us had spoken about Jessica even once. She didn't cross my mind for the most part, and even if she did, I chose not to mention it. When I told my friends about this during the divorce, they all said that it was incredibly naive of me to blindly trust my husband so much. I agree with them now, but back then I would have trusted that man with my life. 5 months into his new job, I realized that I had missed my period. Not thinking much of it, I decided to take a pregnancy test anyway just to put my mind at ease. To my surprise, it was a positive test. I was taken aback. It was clearly not a planned pregnancy, but with Nathan's new work and both of us being in a decent situation financially, I thought that it may be a wonderful thing. I was anxious to tell him, but yet incredibly excited. Nathan was on another business trip when I took the test, but he was coming back the same day, so I opted to wait till he got back. I clearly recall how nervous I was, and how I started thinking about our new life. It was fairly late by the time he got home, and I remember staying up to have dinner together. He came in looking sad, so I asked him what happened, and he told me it was just work stuff, and that he didn't want to talk about it. I said that I might have something that could cheer him up and asked him to wait while I got the test kit. I told him to close his eyes, held it up, and asked him to open his eyes. He just stared at me for a few seconds and asked me if that was what he thought it was. I thought he was just in shock and said that yes, and we're about to be parents excitedly. I waited for him to snap out of it and be happy, but after a few moments of anticipation, he still had that look on his face. As I began to feel uneasy, I inquired as to his well-being and whether he wasn't overjoyed by the situation. His entire demeanor shifted, and he explained that he was merely surprised. I shared with him my surprise, but I also think this could turn out to be something good for us if we work through it together. Claiming to require some time for contemplation, he continued to appear uneasy. The response angered me greatly. I was hoping for his joy, or, at the very least, his support. When I expressed my disappointment in him, he basically ignored me, claiming that I had no right to expect him to be ecstatic about a life-altering event that was entirely his doing. He agreed to be my husband when he married me, so I suggested we reevaluate our relationship if he couldn't handle being a good husband in this situation. After silently suggesting that perhaps we do, he abruptly exited the room. I was angry and hurt when I said that. I did not actually intend it at the time, but his reaction destroyed my heart. I cried by myself in the living room and slept on the couch because I didn't want to see him in our bedroom. He didn't come once to check up on me or ask me to come back. Even at that point, I had faith that we would get through this and somehow recover. But that was just the beginning of my troubles. When I awoke, he was already getting ready for work and had breakfast ready to go. Instead of talking to him, I retreated to our bedroom. Once again, he made no attempt to intervene or even speak to me. The next step was unclear to me. I waited for him to come in after me, but after some time I heard the front door close and knew that he had left. I spent most of that day crying to my friends and my mom. I called in sick from work. I literally remember it like it was yesterday. By the time it was time for him to come back from work, I had a whole speech ready about how he broke my heart and needed to be a better husband to me. Little did I know he also had a speech ready, and it was nothing I could have imagined. The first thing he said after coming home was, "We need to talk." That worked for me. I needed to talk as well. I thought I needed that talk way more than he did, really. Turns out he had the surprise of a lifetime for me. We sat down across from one another and with no warning. He asked me, "Whose baby is it?" I was really bewildered. I truly didn't comprehend what he meant. So I asked him, and he asked me the same thing again. "Whose baby is it?" I shall never forget. I asked him what he meant and claimed that certainly it was our baby. What else could ever be possible? I mean, he told me that we were past that point and I should simply admit the truth and get it done with. I was starting to get scared at that point. The joking aspect began to fade. I reminded him that the kid was clearly his, and I couldn't comprehend his curiosity in me. I had always been incredibly faithful to him, and he had never behaved in such a way. When I showed any interest in our connection, he stated, I stopped making eye contact with him. I was probably already in tears by that point. I tried to reassure him that our marriage was my first priority and that I loved him endlessly, but he persisted in asking the same question. They must have questioned me at least twice. On top of that, I was completely bewildered every time. Since he was not going to raise another man's child while deceiving him, he informed me there was nothing he could do if I couldn't be truthful with him. I couldn't comprehend what I had done to merit such accusations as I sobbed, and continued telling him that I had never considered another man since we met. Tell him whatever he wants to know about my loyalty, he urged, because I couldn't wait for him to go on business trips and leave the house. Words failed me because I was bewildered. I reminded myself to be an adult and encourage him professionally every time he left for work, even though I felt sad every time he did so. I still remember how difficult it was for us when he lost his job, in every case. After the first few occasions, I stopped requesting to tag along because he insisted he was too busy and didn't have time to himself until late at night. He would not answer my calls and would instead text me that he was with clients, so I stopped trying to reach him more than once a day while he was away. Despite my best efforts, he insisted that I wanted him to spend time with another man. And I was shocked to hear him say that. It was as painful as a slap in the face. I was sick with dread. I nearly believed I was in a nightmare. After I informed him about everything, he told me not to make him look bad since he was sick of being unloved and wouldn't allow me embarrass him. He felt unappreciated and unsupported by me ever since he began working and traveling. He claimed he detested returning home because I didn't appear to be smiling when he was there, and he thought I was happier when he wasn't. As a supportive wife, all I could do was assure him he was mistaken and that there had been a major misunderstanding. Rather than be present in our marriage, he insisted on spending time with someone else, and he accused me of being unfaithful. When I questioned him about the veracity of his claims, He insisted he didn't need evidence to see what was plain to anyone with even a rudimentary level of intelligence. To be honest, I was at a loss for words in response. I continued bringing up the fact that I haven't been seeing anyone, and that he wasn't around much either because I was at home, or because I went out with friends, but he was welcome to look at my phone whenever he wanted. He said he didn't need my phone because it contained proof that I had erased. That was really defeating for me. I mean, really, what else am I supposed to say? To demonstrate my commitment, I inquired as to what he wanted me to accomplish. Although it shattered my dignity to suggest such a degrading thing, I proposed a paternity test following the baby's birth. Offering a paternity test willingly is something I could never have imagined a million years ago. I have always been proud of my morals and ethics. Anyone who knows me would have backed me up in this. Anyone except my own husband, of course. That's what stung the most. He said that he couldn't wait 9 months for a betrayal and there was no way he would assist me grow and nurture a child that wasn't his. I shouted at him, stating it was his baby, and branded him a deluded freak for not believing me. He added that he didn't care what I believed he was, but if I wanted this marriage to work, I needed to get an abortion. I was astonished he even stated that. I encouraged him to think about what he was saying for a second, and how ridiculous he sounded. He wouldn't budge. So I asked him what he would do if I didn't get an abortion, because there was no way I would get one. He told me that if I wanted this marriage, then I had to seek an abortion, or else it was divorce. Divorce. I couldn't believe that he actually said the word. He assured me he was being serious when I inquired. By that time I had had enough. Hearing those words seemed to lift every weight from my shoulders. He was informed he could do as he pleased, but I insisted on keeping and rearing our child regardless of his involvement. He left the house after telling me he hoped I wouldn't sleep with a deadbeat. We didn't spend any more time in the house after that. Later he texted me to say he was going back to retrieve his belongings. I gave him my departure time and advised him to leave before I returned. My divorce attorney and I met the next day to go over the details. We were co-owners of the house, our very own home. Like Nathan, I wanted things to move quickly and without incident. We agreed to sell the house and divide the proceeds 50/50. For everything else, we took what we wanted. He left, and I stayed with my sister to figure things out. Anywhere, I suppose. We completely lost contact with one another. Nobody in our family or social circles anticipated it. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to explain what happened and broken down in tears. His demeanor stayed unchanged through it all. I was the only one he would listen to, as he maintained my unfaithfulness and ignored everyone else. Rumor has it that he's been complaining to the wives of his coworkers about how uninterested I am in being his girlfriend, and how I've never tried to make our relationship work. Instead of experiencing it firsthand, the whole divorce process seemed like it was occurring to someone else, or was happening in a movie. There were moments when I nearly bought into the idea that I had done something wrong to make him feel the way he said I did. Talking it out was my #1 priority, but he totally ignored me. I texted him to inform him of my son's birth. Without responding, he remained silent. One of the wives contacted me months after the fact to inquire as to whether or not I was aware of his whereabouts. We hadn't been in touch, I informed her. She expressed her apologies as well, but she preferred that a friend contact me first. I asked her what happened, and she claimed that Nathan had gotten back with Jessica. Apparently they were the main subject in the office and were all over each other all the time. I broke down crying. Over the next 3 weeks, I figured out everything. They had been seeing each other for months. All those business trips that he went on were nothing but excuses to spend time with Jessica at her apartment. Jessica was the one who misled him into thinking I must be seeing other men behind his back, since according to her, if she had a man, she would never let him stay away from her so much, and a heap of other crap. All of this came to my attention when my friends acted as if they were friends with her in order to gain insight into our relationship with Nathan. She seemed utterly unapologetic and haughty about it. To be completely honest, I felt like the biggest moron. There were warning flags and indicators that I had previously ignored. It seems so glaringly evident now that we can look back. I spent months in a slump. I was really depressed, and it was probably the hardest period of my life. I had to stop my job and had to rely on my family to help me by. Being a single mother, and dealing with my depression, and the guilt of being a burden on my family was excruciating. Rough year, to say the least. I am grateful that my sister was by my side. Without her, I truly do not know what I would have done. The process was lengthy, though I did get well. I shifted my attention away from Nathan and Jessica and onto my son. I also secured a new job and my own flat. Just when I believed my marriage to my ex-husband was over for good, I married a wonderful man who treats me like royalty. Our wedding was 2 years ago. He is the best thing that has possibly ever happened to me, and I am so glad my son and I get to have him in our lives. Now that I've gotten all that out of the way, let me tell you why I'm actually writing this post. A few weeks ago, I was on Facebook scrolling randomly when I got a text from Nathan. We have had absolutely no contact over the last few years, so seeing his name pop up on the screen was a feeling I cannot exactly describe. I debated if I should even check his text, but curiosity got the best of me and I opened the chat. He added that he had been trying to contact me, but my number had changed, and he didn't know where I live now. He wrote a very long text about how he had broken up with Jessica because she was cheating on him with many men, and that he never should have let her enter into our relationship. He added that he had thought of me and our son all the time over the previous 8 years, but was too ashamed to reach out to me. He also added that he knew I would never forgive him, but he wanted to be in his son's life and would do anything for a chance to prove himself worthy of being a dad. The text featured a bunch of other things, but primarily just him groveling about how he wants to see his son. I couldn't believe my eyes, actually. After all those years, the poetic justice of Jessica cheating on him after he accused me of doing that isn't lost on me. It also felt extremely wonderful to see him grovel and beg about being a part of my son's life, because I know that no matter what he says, it isn't happening. What could I do? I gave it a lot of thinking. I considered turning a blind eye to him, or even attacking him, or just not letting him through. However, at that point, my spiteful instincts kicked in. As a result, his birth certificate did not list a father. Since Nathan was so unconcerned just now, I decided not to mention his name. He does not have any legal authority over him. Before we were married, my husband and I dated for 2 years. He has known my son from that point on and adored him. For all his years, he has never had a father figure. On the anniversary of our marriage a year ago, he formally adopted my son. All things considered, we are a close-knit family. I responded to my husband's text by claiming I didn't understand what he was saying, allowing my evil thoughts to win a little. Even though my son was never biologically his, my wonderful husband has taken him in as his own. He deserved to be alone, I reminded him, and whatever Jessica warned him all those years ago was true. He was the perfect target for infidelity. As icing on the cake, I gave him a photo of my husband, our son, and our family. I blocked him and told him he could never contact me again. That doesn't give Nathan any claim to my son, though. What I claimed about his not being his biological child was obviously false. Even before my son was born, he blew that opportunity. The opportunity to make him feel some fraction of the pain he caused me was too good to pass up. My spouse scoffed and told me I shouldn't be so petty when I told him about my actions. I wanted to see whether Laura had heard anything about Nathan, as her husband works with him, so I contacted her last night. She mentioned that she was planning to contact me over the same matter. Nathan, it seems, hasn't been doing too well recently. On numerous occasions he had arrived at work intoxicated, nearly leading to his dismissal. I told Nathan something, but it seems like Laura has no idea. This led her to believe that he was finally coming to terms with his breakup with Jessica. They split up months ago. I just listened to everything and pretended to be startled at what she said. For being such a wonderful friend, I thanked her. Before I tell my spouse, I can't tell my friends, and I still haven't told him. Apologies, but I've been experiencing some guilt lately. Perhaps I went too far? Hi, AITA. First update, I just wanted to express my deepest gratitude for everyone's kind words and suggestions. Your insights and experiences have been incredibly instructive to read. Knowing that there are others who agree with my petty views and believe that Nathan received his due is a relief. I do have a bit of an update on the whole Nathan thing. Laura contacted me once more to inform me that he supposedly got into a heated argument with Jessica while they were both working late one night at the office. It seems like he made quite a scene, as many others noticed them being quite disruptive and pushing each other about. Shortly thereafter, Nathan and Jessica were both dismissed, and since then, nobody had heard from either of them. The only thing I can think about is how relieved I am that he has taken his frustrations out on Jessica and isn't attempting to include me in any future role. I would prefer not to interact with him. Laura appeared somewhat worried when I informed her my decision on what I told Nathan. Both my kid and I despise Nathan for what he did to us, but she worries that I've gone too far in my animosity against him, and she sees no use in allowing our shared history impact anyone. In fact, she is advising me to reconnect with Nathan and inform him the truth. Even though she has assured me that she will not inform anyone, she believes that I should reveal the truth, nevertheless. Several things make me disagree with this. Not only do I not have the emotional wherewithal to spare Nathan his suffering, but I also would rather he not get enraged and seek out a means to gain access to my son. Though improbable, everything is possible. I can't let something like this slide because my son is too essential to me, and because I don't trust Nathan enough. I don't get why this seems to be such a huge deal to him now, especially because what I did might have happened while we were married. A lot of thinking has gone into this second update since my last one. After listening to Laura explain what had transpired, I chose to tell my husband the truth. He helped me feel better since he was so kind and encouraging. We had a long conversation in which I laid out everything that had happened, from the message Nathan had sent to my reaction to it. All the while he held my hand, my husband listened attentively. Upon my completion, he informed me that he comprehended my reasoning but acknowledged that my approach could have been too severe. We discussed the significance of letting go of the past and focusing on the here and now. I was able to gain some perspective after this talk. Although I may have been too harsh, I am glad I stood up for my son and myself. Now that Nathan has made his decisions, he must face the results. But my spouse believes it's unhealthy, so I guess I'll have to work on the animosity I feel against him. To some extent I concur with him. However, that matters to me, and my loved ones as well. The inclusion of Nathan is unnecessary, in my opinion. Third update. Hello there. I just wanted to give you a little update on how things are going with me. My husband and I had a long conversation, and I ultimately chose to see a therapist in order to process my feelings around Nathan and the entire situation. The professional viewpoint and the beginning of the process of letting go of the past have been really beneficial. I'm not caring about Nathan or anything, I just want to keep my marriage strong. In my opinion, if I want to be an improved wife and mother to my child, I must totally release myself from my past. It was also suggested that I consider going to therapy, and I must say some of you were absolutely correct. I am not interested enough to inquire about Nathan again, and I haven't heard from Laura since the last time. That is irrelevant to me. He ought to handle his own problems now that he's an adult. As for me, I am doing quite well, and that is all that counts. He deserved what he got. And I'm delighted he came to me for help.